October 1962, the United States Strategic Air Command moves the American military to Defense Condition 2, one step away from nuclear war.
Each one of those bombers had a target.
In the U.S. and Moscow, accusations and denials.
I'm prepared to wait for my answer until hell freezes over.
U.S. invasion forces are poised for a massive attack, while at sea, in the air, and on land, nuclear weapons are in the hands of captains and majors.
If called upon to use a weapon, we would have fulfilled our orders.
We're going to throw the Soviets out of there and, teach them this is our hemisphere. And we're going to do away with Castro once and for all.
The attention of the world is on the island nation of Cuba, where men, women, and children are mobilized to defend against imminent invasion. In the White House and the Kremlin, lack of sleep, lack of communication.
The question that was raised, who's in charge in the Soviet Union? That's when things really get dangerous.
At stake is the fate of the entire world. There is little doubt that this war, if it comes, will be nuclear.
There was panic. There's no two ways about it. People thought that this was a real thing.
I told my wife, I will not go to work today. I don't know what will be tomorrow. It's quite possible that tomorrow we will not be alive.
DEFCON 2, the highest state of U.S. military readiness, short of nuclear war.
I'm Tom Clancy. Most of you know me as a writer of fiction involving nuclear weapons and superpower confrontation. But for a few tense weeks in October 1962, it wasn't fiction at all. It was reality. In Washington, Moscow, Havana, and on the high seas. We've always known that the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world closer than it has ever been to nuclear war. But much of what really went on behind the scenes has been kept top secret until only very recently. Now, 40 years later, those who are on the front lines of the crisis, missile commanders, submarine captains, and undercover spies, now tell us that we were even closer to nuclear war than almost anyone thought. That nuclear launch capability on both sides depended upon the reliability of mid-rank officers, men who would not hesitate to fire those devastating weapons if ordered to do so. Worse yet, a global nuclear war could very easily have started by accident. It was touch and go for days when, for the first time in history, the United States went to DEFCON 2. I'm Tom Clancy, and this is DEFCON 2.
It's the height of the Cold War, and the leader of the Soviet Union, Premier Nikita Khrushchev, is contemplating his next critical move. He takes a walk with his defense minister, Marshal Malinovsky, on the shores of the Black Sea.
When the days are clear, you can see across the Black Sea the lines of the Turkish shore. And Malinovsky and Khrushchev, walking alongside, were discussing, and then suddenly Malinovsky said, "Well, Nikita, look there. It's Turkey. There are American missiles." And Khrushchev reacted, "We must think about it and do something."
Khrushchev can see more than Jupiter missiles in Turkey. He can see the Soviet Union's entire strategic position in mid-1962, and he does not like what he sees. He sees the U.S. and its NATO allies surrounding him with nuclear weapons. 15 Jupiter missiles being installed in Turkey, 30 more in Italy, 60 Thor missiles in Britain. But most threatening of all, he sees nearly 1,600 American strategic bombers and 200 intercontinental ballistic missiles, which can strike the Soviet Union from the U.S. In the Cold War balance, the Soviets have a significant disadvantage. General Anatoly Gribkov served on the Red Army General Staff in Moscow.
The United States had about 5,000 warheads, the Soviet Union 300, and of those only 2 or 3 dozen that could hit the United States. Unfortunately for Khrushchev, the Soviet Union was surrounded by military bases, American bases. But America was free of that encirclement.
But for Khrushchev, there is a bright spot: Fidel Castro's Cuba. A communist island in a sea of American power, Khrushchev's one small foothold in the Western Hemisphere. But Cuba was an ally that could be lost at any moment. The U.S. had been trying to overthrow Castro since 1961, first by small infiltrations, then, finally, in an invasion by Cuban exiles, trained, armed, and sponsored by the CIA. That mission, at the Bay of Pigs, failed badly.
The Bay of Pigs invasion of 1960 was the culmination of activities of the United States against the Cuban Revolution.
After Bay of Pigs invasion and its collapse, Moscow got a proof that there are real intervention plans supported, at least supported, by Washington.
Khrushchev's solution? Do with Cuba what the U.S. had done in Turkey. Put nuclear weapons right under the enemy's nose. The Soviet strategic position would improve practically overnight. With one bold stroke, Castro's Cuba would be protected from impending invasion, while Khrushchev's bargaining power and his prestige would be enhanced. At the Ministry of Defense in Moscow, General Gripkov takes a lead role in planning the top-secret operation.
There were no telephone conversations, no letters written, not even codes, nothing.
The operation is codenamed Anadir. It's the name of a cold Siberian city, a clever diversion from their actual tropical destination.
And it was decided to send a mission to Cuba to discuss this idea with Cubans.
Fidel didn't give us an immediate answer. He said, we need time to think.
When the offer to deploy these missiles was presented by the Soviets in May of 1962, Cuba felt obliged to accept the missiles in order to show solidarity towards socialist countries that were supporting Cuba in this very unequal battle against the U.S. administration.
On the third day, Fidel said, if it is necessary for the interests of the world revolution and the interests of the Soviet Union, then we agree.
With Castro's consent, Operation Anadir is on. It would be the largest seaborne operation in Soviet history. The Soviets have just 4 months to organize, transport, and install 60 nuclear missiles and 40,000 men on an island nearly 8,000 miles away. And it all has to be done in secret. To disguise their intentions, the Soviets decide to use cargo ships,